Welcome back to the One Question Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Steph Garcia-Sykos, and I am delighted to be joined today by Erin Adkins, Executive Senior Associate AD for NIL Strategy and Initiatives at UCLA. Erin, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Stephanie. Excited to chat with you today.
There's so much momentum right now for the Bruins. Women's basketball about to play in the Final Four. Baseball, number one, a new head football coach, so much excitement across all sports. But first, I want to talk a little bit about you and learn about you and your journey. You have a background in compliance and governance. You went to undergrad at Arizona before going to law school, and then your journeys included San Diego, Vanderbilt, before UCLA. Talk to me about when you knew that working in athletics was the route for you.
Yeah, I grew up a Wildcat. My parents went there, my whole family. I've got a ton of family in Tucson. So for me, I grew up around Arizona basketball and just Arizona athletics in general, even though I'm born and raised in Los Angeles. And so it all started just then, like falling in love with college athletics. I grew up Arizona fans. I honestly didn't even assimilate with a pro team. For me, it was all about college athletics, just through my family's affinity for the Wildcats, to the point where when I went to college, it was just a one-stop shop. And so fell in love with it through college, did the regular college experience, didn't work in athletic department during my time there, but just to continue to cement that. And then post-undergrad, when I went to law school, that's where I was like really trying to decide, okay, what does this look like from an athletic perspective? Do I go professional? Spent some time with Angels baseball, and then took an internship with the University of San Diego during my third year of law school. And that's when I was like, oh, this is it. Like the difference between pro and collegiate. Pro, I felt like I could have been just working in any law firm. When I was working in the collegiate space during that internship year, I was like, oh, every day I impact and affect the product. And that was just like, it was signed, sealed, delivered at that point.
I do want to know, when did it register with you that you could work in athletics? That I was a student athlete, and even then I didn't realize that there was a whole like mechanism behind the scenes of what I was doing on the track. So I'm just curious when that clicked for you of, oh, there are people who do this work to make these games that I'm watching happen.
Yeah, it was probably as I was like applying to law school and I was like doing that transition and figuring out, like I knew I wanted to go to law school. Like I just grew up thinking that it was like going to be the best like true liberal arts graduate degree. Let's relearn how to write, research, speak, communicate, problem solve. And then as I was looking at it, I was like, I know I don't want to practice, but I know I want to use it. And I know I want to overlap it with my affinity for sports. So at that point, it was really pro or collegiate. And I knew I wanted collegiate, but it was really during my time at the Angels where I was like, okay, this is cool, but you knew you wanted college. So that's when I really was like, okay, let's try and get that collegiate internship. So it was probably as I was leaving the Angels and like getting excited to try out the internship at San Diego. So just trial and error and just putting yourself out there a little bit.
Tell me how you got from San Diego over to Vanderbilt, across the country, and then back over to UCLA. Obviously, you're from LA. Tell me about how that journey went for you.
First and foremost, like I'm just so lucky. Like in college athletics, you go where you're permitted to go. These are very hard jobs. And to be able to say I've worked in San Diego, Nashville, and Los Angeles is unreal. I've always known I wanted to work at high academic institutions, and to be at 3 high academic, 2 private, 1 public, to me, I think there's no better 3 trio that I could be lucky enough to work for in cities that I just like love as well. San Diego was amazing. I always say I grew up there. I was in my 20s. I spent 7 years there. When you look at my internship year, I went from an intern to a coordinator of compliance and academics, to oversight of compliance, to a sport administrator, and to then eventually on their executive cabinet. So I did the full gamut in 7 years. And then when I took the Vandy job, it was really because I knew I wanted to work with Power 5 football at the time. That was an experience that was really meaningful to me. I loved working with San Diego football, non-scholarship at the time. We won a bunch of Pioneer League championships. And I was like, okay, how do I then level up a little bit from that experience? And I was just at that time looking like, how can I get involved with the Power 5 school and football before I get too into the staying in at a basketball type school. And so when the Vandy job opened, it was great city, great opportunity, overseeing compliance. And at the time it didn't have sport administration. So I knew I'd take that step down, but a really cool opportunity to go up. Flew out, never been to Tennessee, interviewed with Candace, who's their AD now, who's a massive mentor to me. And honestly, that night flew back and she offered me the job while I was in the airport. And it was probably the hardest decision I've ever had to make, is leaving a place like San Diego, because I still am incredibly fond of that place. But it provided me everything I could have asked for to get that experience at an SEC school, Power Five football. And after year one, I was able to be a sport administrator. So it didn't feel like a step back. It felt like a massive leap forward.
It sounds like you have very strong instincts and you knew that you wanted that. You just mentioned that Power Five football experience. You knew that working with that sport at that level was going to be important for your career and probably a passion for you. Where did you get that instinct from? Is it something that was always with you, or was that learned through any of your schooling or growing up experience? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about my career. I would say it's a high priority for me. It's a massive priority for me. So I'm always like, I've definitely 10 toes down always. I'm constantly thinking about being grounded where I'm at. But at the same time, I'm also like always evaluating what's next. And at San Diego, I was getting massive experience and it was just so great. But I always just felt like I was missing that one thing. So at the time, I was like, okay, if and when an opportunity presents itself, like you just got to make that decision to go get it. And it was scary at the time. Still pretty young in my career, moving across the country, brand new city and state. I had never lived east of Tucson, Arizona for college. So it was a massive jump, but it was one that I just felt like I had to take. And I think that is just instinct, like you say. And I don't know, I assume it's learned. Probably learned about it a lot through law school and just all those transitions throughout life. But I think that instinct is what kind of like propels you forward. And like when you make this job your priority, like you just figure it out and you allow the jobs to guide you.
That's such good insight. You mentioned sport administrator duties. That's obviously a big carrot that so many young administrators are going for. When you first started working as a sport administrator, when those opportunities came your way, how did you know you were ready?
I always tell people that like I'm a massive compliance fan. Like I'll be a compliance nerd through the end. Someday I hope I'm an athletic director and like I will never not be proud that I have a compliance background. And what I know every year we have law school interns or I hire a first year compliance coordinator. I say, this is lucky. This is the experience you want. When you're in compliance, there is not a person, a student, or a department in this program that doesn't touch you. Marketing has to ask you questions, development, ticketing, staff, coaches, you're a part of coach hires. Like it gives you every opportunity you want because you're not siloed into your box. You're like I almost view compliance, especially 10 years ago. Now we're a little bit deregulated and our compliance has evolved. But 10, 15 years ago, like to me, compliance was the center of the wheel because every spoke hit you and you talk to everybody. So for me, I think coming from a compliance background, and I've seen it with sport administrators that I have been able to mentor and bring up, A to Z, the department. The coach that comes to you, like you're going to have so many answers already because you know how this place is run. Because I truly think compliance is one of the only areas in the athletic department that everybody touches. And so I always say it's like such an easy transition. You got to shut off a little bit of the monitoring and the reporting that you do and just really be more of a problem solver, which is how I actually attacked compliance anyways. But like our compliance administrators are so much more set up for success as a sport AD, I believe, than a true external or a marketing revenue or somebody that oversees ticketing, because like you are just so hitting that and everybody can learn it. And you could be, if you are in one of those positions, like it's just stuff you learn and understand. I just truly believe like I'm a compliance nerd at heart, and like you have so many advantages coming up through compliance and governance because of all the access points you've been fortunate enough to touch and educate and whatnot.
I do have a side question. I was a student athlete, as I mentioned, and I remember those compliance meetings at the beginning of the season being so brutal. How do you make them engaging for the athletes, especially nowadays with all of the changes?
I have two rules that I've lived by since my first year of compliance. You'd never have a student athlete meeting over 30 minutes, and it's preferred to be 20 minutes. And you never have a coach meeting over 45, and it's preferred to be 40 minutes. Like the sweet spot for student athletes is 20 minutes, and the sweet spot for coaches is 40. And so you'll never catch me in like a quarterly or monthly coaches meeting at over 45 minutes. And my staff knows that. And you'll never catch me in a student athlete meeting for longer than 20 minutes. So it starts with how long can I keep their attention? Because the reality is our job is not to tell everybody everything. It's to make them aware of where they go and what their resources are, and then give them the four guardrails of this little box they can play in, and then let them figure it out. And so you can do all that in 20 minutes. So you'll never see my beginning of the compliance year meeting with student athletes be more than 20 minutes. And I think it's just time, and it's just that. Because if you can tell them, hey, we're going to be in 20 minutes, I need you to focus. I want you to know who I am. I want you to have my cell phone number. I want you to know my email, where my office is. Because at the end of the day, whether I keep you here for 20 minutes or an hour, I can't tell you everything you need to know. You need to know how to find me and how to make sure you understand the resources and the easies, right? Be in 12 units, pass 6 units, don't accept this money, and you're going to get drug tested. And let's move on.
I love it. Cut and dry.
Yeah.
From the sport administrator perspective, less so of the compliance officer perspective, what is your secret for establishing that connection and that rapport with the student athletes? And then, of course, most importantly, with the coaches?
Yeah, the biggest one is showing up, FaceTime, relationship, creating those times. Like, I'll usually get to practice at the beginning and walk around while they're stretching, or hit the last 20 minutes where I can hit them afterwards. So the biggest thing is like find time to go to practice, let them see you, find small wins where you help them solve a problem. Like, this whole thing is based on trust. So whether it's helping a student athlete with a housing issue they're having or getting them to a resource that they need, now they know who you are and they know that you can help them. The FaceTime is massive, just going to practice, letting them see you. And it's all the same with coaches, right? Get an easy win with a coach early, so they see your grind and they see that, okay, she's going to help and work and problem solve for me. And then just continue to show up. I'm addicted to my phone, and probably a little bit too much. I think if you were to ask students or our coaches about me, I think the first thing they would say is she always answers. And if she doesn't answer, she'll text you within 5 minutes about when she will call you back. And it's a little bit addicting because, like, I just feel like I have this need and purpose to always be around and helpful. It helps. And then the time when, hey, I'm out of pocket for 4 hours, like, they understand that. But just build the relationship early and get that trust early, get those small wins early, and then it's just like really easy. But if I see a student athlete walking to our training table or meal, yesterday I did it. I walked with her. I was going up to my office, but I just walked with her. I said, hey, how was your spring break? What did you do? Oh, I went to London. Oh, I was in London. Walked her to the training table and then walked out and continued on my way. So it's like finding those small little beats that let them see that, oh, you're around and your door is always open, or you'll come find me. If I want to, I'll go find them. I'll meet them where they are.
And so much of that is putting yourself in position to make those little connections happen, and being on campus and being in the facilities and around. And I guess that is the big benefit of athletics being such an in-person gig versus these companies and tech firms that are all remote.
Yeah.
Interesting. I want to shift and talk a little bit about baseball. UCLA baseball is dominating, ranked number 1 across all the rankings and polls, 20-game win streak, best conference start since the 70s. From your perspective as the person that the sport reports up to, what's the secret sauce to this team's success?
I'm a massive baseball fan, was prior to collegiate athletics. Like I told you, I was fortunate enough to intern at the Angels. I was in their draft room when they drafted Mike Trout. And so I love the sport. Been fortunate. San Diego got to work with Chris Bryant for 4 years. At Vandy, obviously, they have a massive baseball success. And then being able to come here and watch John just evolve this team over the last 4 years, 3 years, especially with this junior class. And so I just love the sport, first off, and it's just like an honor. Like being with them in Omaha last year, that was a dream. That's to go to Omaha and to go to the College World Series is like anything unlike you would ever experience, especially as a baseball fan, as an administrator. So it's massive. And now, like, getting that taste and being able to see what we can do this year is huge. And I think the success here, Savage, obviously, coach, has been here for almost 15 years now. He's really just built a Southern California powerhouse. He recruits at a high level. He prioritizes California. He prioritizes development. He's got pretty consistent staff. His number 1 assistant has been with him just about the entire time he's been here. And so I think that helps. Like, he's just known for his development. And I think the other thing is this junior class is unreal. When you think about not only Rock, but Vi and Phoenix, and the list goes on and on. We have a junior class that decided we're going to stay together. And in this transfer portal NIL era, they could have made a lot of decisions after their freshman year and then for sure last year. And it was so interesting because those sophomores who are now juniors, they made a concerted effort. Dean West, our junior class is like insane. They are so close that they came together and were like, we are making a pact. We are not going to get torn apart. We're not going to transfer. We're going to lock in. And so to have 6 starting juniors that are 6 of the best juniors in the country, to make that pact, not one of them leave, that's what it is. Like, you just don't get that consistency and that commitment. And that's a testament to Coach Savage and what he did. This is a junior class that in their sophomore year, they were removed from their ballpark last fall because of as we were renegotiating and working through our lease stuff. And even through all of that, they still won a Big Ten championship in their first year. They made it to Omaha. And then even after such a long year, they were like, nope, we're running it right back. And so I just think it's consistency. I think it's Savage's commitment to development. And I think it's 6 to 7 seniors that all came together, juniors that came together and like, we're going to do this together. And I think, with the transfer portal, and then that's just so rare. So I love watching them play. We got SC 3-game sellout coming up this weekend. I'll be with the women's basketball team in Final Four, but it's hard, right? Because I'm like, oh, it'd be so great to be here for this weekend and watch these guys take on SC, who's another great SoCal powerhouse. So we got a lot of things rolling in that team. Sky's the limit. I can't wait for June, but we're taking it day by day because it was fun just streaming, watching them last night, just playing Irvine. So we'll take everything because we only have so much time with these juniors.
It's so fascinating because that culture of development and that commitment to stay, that feels like it's almost becoming extinct in this era of college athletics. Baseball specifically at Division I has changed with roster sizes and different other recruiting changes. How has Coach and his staff, how have they navigated things like roster management and recruiting?
Yeah, it's difficult. In Savage's perfect world, I think sometimes he'd probably keep closer to a 40-man roster. The new rules allow you at 34. You get a little exempted, but it's a smaller roster than he'd probably want. His sweet spot's probably closer to 38. So that's a little bit new for him. He's really big on having a large pitching staff, which you need, especially in college when you're just playing so many days with young arms. So you think about 34 and you're probably needing in the teens of pitchers. Okay, that cuts your roster really low. He's a pitching coach at heart, so he takes that really pridefully, and so his number is always going to be a little bit larger than others because he's probably but is more pitch minded, and so knows what he needs to get through a full season and what the pitching staff needs to look like. So I think that's been his give and take, is really understanding like, how do I maximize my pitching staff while working within that number, knowing what he would really want. So I think that's probably the biggest for him. And then it's really just like finding talent. Like, when you're talking about restricted rosters, you can't miss. Like, when these teams used to hold like 44, like, you can miss because you could have guys on the back, but when you can only have 2 or 3, sometimes only 2 at a position, you got to make sure that your recruiting is correct. And so I think that is the biggest thing. And he's always been a great recruiter. I think every year I've been here, he's had a top 5 recruiting class. And I think I've been here 8 years and he's been here almost 15. I would argue probably 12 or 13 of those years he's had a top 5 recruiting class. So he recruits at a high level and then he develops them. So I think that's the biggest thing, is not missing and just recruiting at a high level, because with roster management, that's all of our teams, as these rosters get smaller, it's more pro, right? Like, pro rosters are way smaller than college. Like, they don't have the opportunity to miss. And so we got to make sure we have no recruiting misses.
How have you brought that experience of your time in the Angels draft room to this position of baseball reporting up to you?
It's so easy. It's such a great question because it's so easy. I spent 2 weeks with the Angels scouts and their GM, Tony Regan at the time. You spend a week, about 10 days leading up to the draft, and then the 4 days at the time, whatever, how many days the MLB draft was at the time, much longer. The amount of time in that room that they talk about character is massive, because character moves you up and down the board. Once you're on the board, like, your athletics, it gets you there. The top 5 guys are going to be the top 5 guys. But man, like, after that top 5, like, it's pretty astounding how much they talk about your resiliency, your character. How do you treat your parents? How do you show up on time? Like, how do you keep your locker? At the pro level, like, it's so nitty gritty. That stuff matters so much, because that's going to level you up. So what I always tell our guys, and whenever I'm in my baseball meeting and we have baseball recruits, is that's what matters. And that's how Savage runs his program. It's a very high character program. It's very minimal, if any, issues. Like, That's what you want. You want us to be able to tell these scouts, no, he's a UCLA Bruin. He's a 3-point ever, and he shows up to class. He's on time. He treats his parents right. But I say, guys, in that room, 10 days with them, the amount of times they talked about character, hand over fist above your athletic ability. Once you're on the board, you're on the board. It's the character and your resiliency and your leadership. That's where you're going to move up and make some money.
That is such great insight. And I think even for folks who have younger athletes, like that is such an important note to keep in mind as you're developing your athlete. I want to shift gears and talk about football because you were on the search committee for new head coach Bob Chesney. Talk to me a little bit about how this search committee was pulled together and how did you handle personally being in such a visible role? I'm sure there were so many keyboard warriors giving their takes on what UCLA needed in their next head coach.
Yeah, this fall was a struggle, obviously. We started 0-3, so you just, okay, how do we figure this out? And then obviously we were the first to make a move and make a change. And it's really rare that ever happens in September. So you're right. Immediately, you just have a magnifying glass on you immediately when you make a change in September. You look at it, you're like, wow, we still have 9 games. And we're also going to go through a football search. So buckle up and just prepare for all the resilience you need while you keep this team and staff motivated while also looking for the next leader for Bruin football. Martin, our athletic director, did a phenomenal job. When he decided to make that change, like immediately he knew the people in the room he wanted. I thought he gathered what was such a high-level committee to find our next head coach. He had a Bruin who's a current GM in the NFL. He had a high Los Angeles-based agent, a past Bruin that was an NBA GM and now is involved in the NFL. He had a former student athlete that was playing in the NFL. Like, we had every facet that we could look at, whether it's agent, GM, owners of companies, and then a Bruin who's played at the NFL. So I think, one, he got the right people in the room because we all were able to challenge each other and be like, okay, what do we want? What are we looking for? And so I think the biggest thing we did is we set those factors first. What does the next leader of Bruin football look like? And then, okay, then now that we know this, let's go out and make sure that as we're interviewing and as we're researching our candidates, that they fit within those boxes and not really leave or move off of this thought of what we need. And I think that's what we did a really good job. So I think it started with the committee. I thought he put together a phenomenal committee. We had a massive support. We have a new chancellor. So it was really good to work with him to understand what he expects from Bruin football, what he wants to look like, what are the resources that we could put in. And so I think it was really 2 things, a great committee and then massive campus alignment. Like, you can't make that kind of change and move and commitment without campus alignment. So the fact that it could start at the chancellor and then Martin as the athletic director really see that vision and then create his own vision, and then me as the sport AD to execute and operate it. I think that's the thing, is you got to have alignment. You got to make sure that it all fits.
As a follow-up, I'm really curious. You mentioned earlier that, of course, you would love to be an AD one day. Here you are sitting right in this number 2 spot behind Martin. How are you working to create that alignment and that connection for yourself in support of Bruins athletics with campus, with the chancellor?
Yeah, I know. Thanks. I think the biggest thing is understanding that we're in such a transformational part of college athletic. And so I also, like I told you earlier, like, I'm big 10 toes down. Like, I have to be where my feet are. So while that is a dream and an instinct that I will follow and chase sometime down the way, I also love this role I'm in. It's kind of nice being the person that you report directly to the AD. I have great oversight opportunities. I get to work with our men's basketball team, our football team. I get to run our NIL during the most transformative part of college athletics. It's just the perfect time to be in this position. So I've more now than ever, I'd say probably 3 years ago, I was looking at more job opportunities than before. Now, like, every day is evolving and I'm learning at such a high clip that, like, I'm so comfortable in the role I'm in. I want to be in a role that challenges me every day and that I'm learning every day. And that's where I am right now. So I'd say mostly from that position of what I want to be, I think about it less today than I probably did a few years ago because I'm so challenged in this new role and I feel so empowered in this new role. After that, it's like I've been on one AD interview and like throughout the Zooms and in person, and I got to a really good place. So in that, I learned a lot. What do you want from a chancellor relationship? What do you need from the other executives on main campus? And so that's where I came back from those interviews and really took the ability to be like, okay, who can I meet on this campus? How can I make sure that they understand like what we're trying to do? And so campus partnerships is a massive part of that, and especially with the new chancellor and understanding kind of his vision. But really right now I'm just so focused on doing this job because it's so empowering and it's so educating that I'm great. Like I just think that's awesome. And it puts a little pressure off this thought of what's next for a person like me who's always trying to also figure out what's next.
That's the perfect place to be. Part of your role, the biggest part of your role, is NIL, strategy and initiatives. So you get a very interesting connection with the student athletes, not only as a sport administrator, but also as this go-to fount of knowledge about NIL. How are the student athletes right now navigating this landscape, the transfer portal and the NIL and rev share and all of these questions? Is there a common question that you're being asked? Is there a kind of any themes that you're picking up from the athletes themselves?
Yeah, I don't think anybody is like the czar of NIL. I don't think it's anything that can be like owned or learned right now just because it's evolving at such a rapid pace. So I think first is like I start every day learning. I try and read one or two articles a day, just seeing like what other people are doing so I can know if we're on the right track or if I should add to what others. And so the one is you just got to learn it because you got to understand the environment because it's changing rapidly. And so if I'm doing that, it's like how do I expect our student athletes to? I think but it's different now. I'd say like the amount of our student athletes that have representation in agents is like massive. So I'd say a lot of that is honestly coming from their representation, especially in baseball, basketball, and football, where I'd say 80% of those programs have representation. So a lot of that education is coming from their agents. But we put out a ton of stuff. We've got a great staff. We've got an in-house marketing agency that works with them every day on their brands and getting them to understand about how many impressions and how many followers help can equate to dollars. So we work really on the brand. We maximize the four letters. Like I think when you're an elite athlete and you combine that with UCLA logo, like and you do it the right way and you go through the marks, like you're unstoppable. So we teach them a lot about brand and what it looks like to have an opportunity to be tied to those four letters and how we can maximize and their opportunities related financially. And so but that's what we do. We do a lot of brand building. We put a lot into it. We put in a lot with Article 41, our in-house marketing agency that not only goes out and looks to their deals, but is just like creating content for them. We got a full-time content position now that all he does is work on our student athletes. So he goes to practice and shoots content for them, edits it, and then hey, here you go, post this on your Instagram so that we can get more followers and more impressions. So like we just put a lot into it. We're passionate about it. We think we're in Los Angeles. Like we need to be maximizing this. I tell our staff all the time, like this city feels like right now it's built on 20 to 30-year-old influencers that are just coming and doing brand deals. And it's like that's what this city has evolved into. So it's like we have to be able to maximize and we have to be able to learn from that because social media influencers are massive right now and there's a ton of dollars. So why can't we make sure our student athletes are capitalizing like that other age members in this city? So that's the way we look at it.
As we start to wind down here, last question about this broad topic. You mentioned with baseball, there's the continuity and the really thoughtful development and recruiting. But of course, across all sports, there are transfers coming in and out. Big concern in the industry is how are they managing the academic piece if they're transferring so much? And how is long-term affinity going to work if they're going to 3 or 4 institutions? What's UCLA doing for the transfers that are coming in and how are you creating those resources and that connection for them?
We had 41 transfers come in this football off season in the winter, and I welcomed a brand new coach. So I always hired 50 new staff members in that building because it was a full turnover, and then 40 new student athletes. So in about a 3-week period, I put 90 new people into that building. And I think about it all the time, like that, how does that connection look like? Not just for our student athletes, but for our staff. And then the staff that's all supposed to do that. And so we put a lot into it. Coach Chesney had an amazing plan. Like, I mean, if you see some of his content, what he's doing, I mean, he's just all in on it, really understanding the Bruin history and the legacy. He shows up everywhere. He's got a very similar mentality. Like he wants to show up, he wants to support. He had his entire staff and half of his team out at our women's basketball send-off yesterday. That's what you do. You just commit to being a Bruin and you just show up. I saw probably 20 to 30 of those transfers yesterday at the women's basketball send-off. And that was because his whole coaching staff was there and he made it a priority. And he does a ton of team bonding. We come in, we bring in speakers, we teach them about just different Bruin alums that have impacted them. We had alums in early and often throughout January and February to teach them of what this looks like. But it's a real special place. And like, you just have to continue to talk about it and continue to show them how awesome it is to be a top public institution in an awesome city with amazing history. We have, I don't want to butcher this, but 124 national championships. We have an opportunity to win 3 or 4 this spring. And so we have like just this excellence throughout all 25 of our teams. And so we just show it and we ask for their support with each other. And our student athletes do such a good job showing up for each other. And so when they see that, then they get it and they just are able to transition into being a Bruin and a UCLA student pretty easily.
It is a great time to be a Bruin.
We're excited. We got a lot
going on. So much momentum to build on. Erin Adkins, Executive Senior Associate AD at UCLA. Thank you so much for joining us and for giving us all of this tremendous insight. There are so many juicy nuggets from this conversation. I really appreciate you being here with us on the One Question Leadership Podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been fun. Have a great day.
This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.